Wren knew she was the punchline before the carriage even stopped. She had heard them laughing as they loaded her trunk, had seen the smirks exchanged between her stepsisters as they waved goodbye with exaggerated sweetness, had caught the words her stepmother whispered to the coachman when she thought Wren couldn't hear. "Let the beast have her. Maybe he'll choke on the bones." The Lycan king had demanded a bride from every noble house in the realm. A show of loyalty, the decree said, a symbol of unity between the human kingdoms and the Lycan territories. Each family was to send their most prized daughter to be considered for the honor of becoming queen. The Ashford family had sent Wren, not prized, not honored, not wanted. Wren was the daughter of Lord Ashford's first wife, the wife who had died in childbirth, leaving behind a sickly infant that everyone expected to follow her mother to the grave. When Wren had stubbornly survived, her father had remarried, and his new wife had made it clear that Wren was a burden to be tolerated, not a child to be loved. 22 years of being tolerated, of sleeping in the servants' quarters while her stepsisters occupied grand bedrooms, of wearing their cast-offs and eating their scraps, of being reminded, daily, that she was plain and small and worthless. And now she was being sent to the Lycan king as a joke. "Let him see what the Ashfords think of his demand," her stepmother had sneered. "Let him know we'd rather send garbage than our real daughters." The carriage rolled to a stop. Wren took a breath, smoothed her threadbare dress, and stepped out. The Lycan palace rose before her like something out of a nightmare. Black stone walls, towers that clawed at the grey sky, gargoyles perched on every ledge, their stone eyes seeming to track her movement. She was not the only bride. A line of carriages stretched along the circular drive, each one grander than the last. Women in silk and jewels descended from gilded doors, their faces painted, their hair elaborately styled, their gowns worth more than everything Wren had ever owned combined. They stared at her as she joined the procession. Whispers rippled down the line. Laughter, barely concealed. Wren kept her eyes forward and her spine straight. She had endured worse than their mockery. She would endure this too. The great hall was cavernous, a sea of black marble and flickering torches. The bride candidates were arranged in a long line, presented like wares at a market. At the far end of the hall, on a throne carved from what looked like a single massive piece of obsidian, sat the Lycan king. Wren's breath caught. She had expected a monster. The stories described a creature more beast than man, savage, bloodthirsty, barely civilized. She had steeled herself for fangs and claws and feral golden eyes. She had not expected him. He was enormous, yes, broad-shouldered and powerful, with the kind of presence that made the massive hall feel small. His hair was black as ink, falling past his shoulders in waves that caught the torchlight. His jaw was sharp, his cheekbones severe, his mouth set in a line that suggested he had never smiled in his life. But his eyes were molten gold, ancient and knowing, and when they swept down the line of brides, Wren felt them like a physical touch. The ceremony began. One by one, the brides were presented. They curtsied and simpered and showed off their accomplishments, playing instruments, reciting poetry, displaying their needlework. The king watched with barely concealed boredom, dismissing each with a wave of his hand. Wren watched too, and she noticed something the other brides didn't. He wasn't looking at them, not really. His gaze kept drifting over their heads, toward the windows, toward the door, like he was waiting for something that hadn't arrived, or someone. The line shortened. Women were escorted away, some crying, some furious. The king rejected them all. And then it was Wren's turn. The herald glanced at his scroll, then at her, then back at the scroll. His lip curled. Lady Wren Ashford, daughter of Lord Harold Ashford. He paused, and his voice dripped with disdain. Representing the noble house of Ashford. Snickers erupted from the remaining candidates, from the nobles lining the walls, even from some of the servants. Wren walked forward. She didn't curtsy, didn't simper, didn't try to hide what she was. A woman in a faded dress, with unadorned hair and calloused hands. She simply stood before the throne and met the king's golden eyes. "I have no accomplishments to display," she said. Her voice was steady, quiet, but clear. "I cannot play instruments or recite poetry. I have no dowry, no connections, no political value. My family sent me as an insult to you, and everyone in this room knows it." The hall went silent. The king leaned forward. "Then why did you come?" It was the first time he had spoken to any of the brides. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together at the bottom of a river. Wren considered the question. "Because I was told to," she said honestly, "and because I had nowhere else to go." More silence. The king studied her with those burning golden eyes, and Wren felt stripped bare, seen in a way she had never been seen before. "You're not afraid," he observed. "Should I be? Most humans are terrified of me. Most humans haven't spent 22 years being treated like they don't exist." Wren lifted her chin. "You can't frighten someone who has nothing left to lose." Something shifted in the king's expression, something that might have been interest, or recognition, or both. He rose from his throne. The hall gasped. He hadn't risen for any of the other brides, hadn't moved at all, except to dismiss them. He descended the steps, slowly, deliberately, until he stood before Wren. This close, she had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. He towered over her, nearly 2 feet taller, his shoulders blocking out the torchlight behind him. "Your family sent you as a joke," he said quietly. "As an insult." "Yes. They expected me to be offended, to reject you, to punish them, perhaps, for their mockery." "I imagine so." The king smiled. It was a terrifying expression, all teeth and sharp edges and predatory promise. But beneath the danger, Wren glimpsed something else, something almost like satisfaction. "Then let me disappoint them." He turned to face the hall, his voice rising to fill every corner. "I accept her. She's mine." Chaos erupted. Nobles shouted. Brides wailed. The herald dropped his scroll. Somewhere in the crowd, Wren heard someone scream that this was an outrage, a disgrace, a mockery of the entire selection process. The king ignored them all. He turned back to Wren, and his golden eyes softened into something almost gentle. "You said you had nowhere else to go," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. "Now you do." Wren stared up at the Lycan king, this ancient, powerful creature who had just claimed her in front of the entire realm. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you walked into this hall expecting nothing and asked for nothing. Because you looked at me like I was a man instead of a monster." His hand rose to cup her chin, tilting her face toward his. "And because the moment you spoke, something in my soul recognized something in yours." "I don't understand." "You will." He released her chin and offered his hand instead. "Come with me. Let me explain what you've just agreed to." Wren looked at his hand, at the hall full of shocked, furious faces, at the future she had never dared to imagine. She took his hand, and let the joke bride become something else entirely. The king's name was Damon. Wren learned this in the private study he led her to, far from the chaos of the great hall. The room was warm, lined with books, lit by a fire that crackled softly in a massive stone hearth. It felt almost cozy. Nothing like what she'd expected from the lair of a monster. "Sit," Damon said, gesturing to a chair by the fire. "You look like you're about to collapse." Wren's legs were shaking. She hadn't noticed until he pointed it out. She sank into the chair gratefully, the soft cushions engulfing her. Damon didn't sit. He paced before the fireplace, his massive frame casting flickering shadows across the walls. He looked agitated, uncertain. Nothing like the cold, commanding figure who had silenced an entire hall with a single declaration. "You deserve an explanation," he said finally. "I would appreciate one. What do you know about Lycan mates?" Wren frowned. "Only stories. That Lycans have fated partners, souls bound together before birth." She shook her head. "I always assumed it was a myth." "It's not." Damon stopped pacing and turned to face her. The firelight caught his golden eyes, making them glow. "For 312 years, I've been searching for mine. I've attended 1,000 balls, reviewed 10,000 candidates, traveled to every corner of the known world." His jaw tightened. "Nothing. No one. I had begun to believe I was cursed, that I would rule alone until the end of time." Wren's heart beat faster. "And then?" "And then you walked into my hall in a faded dress, told me to my face that your family sent you as an insult, and something in my chest." He pressed his hand to his heart. "Woke up. You're saying I'm your mate. I'm saying my soul recognized yours the moment you spoke." He crossed to her chair and knelt before her, bringing his eyes level with hers. "I know how this sounds. I know you have no reason to trust me. But I need you to understand. I didn't choose you to make a political statement or punish your family. I chose you because you're mine. The other half of me that I've been searching for since before your great-grandmother was born." Wren stared at him. This ancient king, kneeling at her feet, telling her she was the answer to 3 centuries of loneliness. "I'm nobody," she said. "I'm not beautiful or accomplished or special. I'm just—" "Don't." The word came out sharp. "Don't tell me what you're not. I've had beautiful women paraded before me for 300 years. I've heard every accomplished lady in every kingdom recite poetry and play instruments until I wanted to tear my ears off. Beauty fades. Accomplishments bore me." His hand reached out, hovering near her face but not quite touching. "You looked at me without fear. You spoke truth without apology. You stood in a room full of people mocking you and didn't crumble. That's not nobody, Wren. That's extraordinary." Her eyes burned. She blinked rapidly, refusing to cry. "What happens now?" "That depends on you." Damon lowered his hand. "The mate bond can't be forced. If you reject me, I'll let you go. I'll give you gold, safe passage, a new life wherever you want. You'll never have to see your family again. And if I don't reject you, then you'll become my queen, my partner, my equal in all things." His voice softened. "I won't pretend it will be easy. My world is dangerous. My enemies are numerous. But I will protect you with every breath in my body, and I will spend the rest of my considerable life making sure you never feel invisible again." Wren thought about the home she was leaving behind, the cold servants' quarters, the scraps of food, the daily humiliations, the whispered insults, the constant reminder that she was nothing. Then she thought about Damon, his fierce golden eyes, his voice when he said she was extraordinary. the way her soul had lurched when she first saw him on that throne, a feeling she had dismissed as fear, but now recognized as something else entirely. "I don't know how to be a queen," she admitted. "I'll teach you. I don't know how to be anyone's equal. I've only ever been beneath." "Then let me show you what it feels like to stand beside someone instead of behind them." "What if I disappoint you?" Damon smiled. It transformed his face, softening the harsh lines, lighting up those golden eyes, making him look almost boyish despite his centuries. "You couldn't disappoint me if you tried." He finally allowed his hand to rest against her cheek, and Wren felt the touch like lightning through her veins. "You're already everything I've ever wanted. You just don't know it yet." Wren leaned into his touch. It was a small movement, a surrender she hadn't known she was capable of. "I don't want to go back," she whispered. "I don't want the gold, or the safe passage, or the new life. I want—" She struggled for words. "I want to see what this could be, what I could be, with someone who actually sees me." "Is that a yes?" "It's a tentative yes, a conditional yes." She met his eyes. "I need time to understand all of this, to trust it. I've been hurt too many times to simply fall into your arms and believe everything will be perfect. I would never ask you to fall blindly." Damon rose to his feet, then offered her his hand to help her stand. "Take all the time you need. I've waited 300 years. I can wait a little longer." Wren let him pull her up. Standing before him, the top of her head barely reaching his shoulder, she should have felt small, insignificant. Instead, she felt seen. "There's something else you should know," Damon said. "Your family's insult, sending you as a joke bride, has not gone unnoticed. The nobles in that hall will spread the story across every kingdom by morning." Wren's stomach dropped. "They'll make me a laughingstock." "No." Damon's smile turned sharp, predatory. "They'll make your family one. The House of Ashford sent their garbage daughter to mock me, and I chose her over every prized beauty in the realm. By tomorrow, every noble house will be asking themselves what they missed, what value the Ashfords threw away." His eyes gleamed. "Your stepmother wanted to humiliate you. Instead, she's handed you a crown and made herself look like a fool." Something warm bloomed in Wren's chest, something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. "I think," she said slowly, "I'm going to enjoy being your queen." Damon laughed, a real laugh, full and warm and startled out of him. "I think," he replied, "I'm going to enjoy watching you become one." He offered her his arm. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. Together they walked out of the study to face whatever came next. The corridors of the palace were empty now, the other bride candidates dismissed, the nobles scattered to whisper about the shocking turn of events. Wren was grateful for the quiet. Her mind was still reeling, still trying to process everything that had happened. "You'll have your own chambers," Damon said as they walked. "Adjacent to mine, but separate. I won't presume." "Thank you." Wren meant it. After a lifetime of sleeping where she was told, wearing what she was given, existing only at the convenience of others, the promise of her own space felt revolutionary. "There's a seamstress who will come tomorrow to take your measurements, and a lady's maid, if you want one. Whatever you need, you only have to ask." "I've never had anyone ask what I needed before." Damon stopped walking, turned to face her. In the dim torchlight of the corridor, his expression was unreadable, but his voice was rough with something that might have been anger. "Every moment you spent being treated as less than you are was a crime, Wren. I can't undo 22 years of cruelty, but I can make sure you never experience another moment of it. You barely know me. I've known you for 300 years. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with unexpected gentleness. I just didn't know your face until today. Wren's breath caught. It was the same thing he'd said in the study, but hearing it again, feeling his fingertips brush her skin, it felt different, more real, more terrifying, more wonderful. "Good night, Damon," she said softly. "Good night, Wren." He stepped back, putting proper distance between them. "Sleep well. Tomorrow we begin." She watched him disappear down the corridor, his broad shoulders swallowed by shadow. Then she entered her chambers, and let herself finally, fully breathe. The room was enormous. A bed fit for royalty, a fireplace already lit, windows that overlooked moonlit gardens she had never imagined she would see. Wren sank onto the edge of the bed and pressed her hands to her face. She had walked into this palace expecting humiliation, rejection, perhaps even death. Instead, she had found something impossible, someone who saw her, someone who wanted her, someone who might just be the beginning of everything. 3 weeks changed everything. Wren woke each morning in silk sheets instead of scratchy wool. She ate breakfast at a proper table instead of standing in the kitchen, snatching scraps between chores. She wore gowns that had been made for her, in colours she had chosen herself. It felt like living someone else's life. And then there was Damon. He was patient in a way that seemed impossible for someone so powerful. He never pushed, never demanded. He simply showed up. At breakfast, asking about her sleep. At lunch, walking with her through the gardens. At dinner, listening as she talked about nothing and everything, his golden eyes warm with attention. He was teaching her, she realized. Not just about being queen, though there were lessons for that too. Endless instruction on protocol and politics and the delicate dance of Lycan nobility. He was teaching her what it felt like to matter. "You're staring again," Damon said. They were in the library, surrounded by books older than her entire bloodline. Wren had discovered she loved to read, had never been allowed to before, books being too precious for someone like her, and Damon had given her free rein of the entire collection. "I'm thinking," she corrected. "About what?" "About how strange this all is." She set down the volume she'd been pretending to read. 3 weeks ago, I was scrubbing floors and eating cold porridge. Now I'm sitting in a library with a king who looks at me like I hung the moon." "You did hang the moon." Damon's voice was matter of fact. "You just don't know it yet." "See, that's what I mean." Wren gestured at him in frustration. "You say things like that. Impossible things. Beautiful things. And I don't know what to do with them." "You could believe them." "I'm trying." Her voice cracked slightly. "It's just hard to trust that this is real, that you won't wake up one day and realize you made a mistake." Damon set aside his own book and crossed to where she sat, curled in a window seat. He settled beside her, his massive frame somehow fitting into the small space without crowding her. "Do you know why I rejected all those other brides?" he asked. "Because they weren't your mate." "Partly, but mostly because they looked at me and saw a crown, a title, a way to increase their family's power." His jaw tightened. 300 years of women who wanted what I could give them, not one who wanted me. "And you think I'm different?" "I know you are." He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with devastating gentleness. "You walked into that hall expecting nothing. hoping for nothing. You looked at me like I was just a man, not a prize to be won or a monster to be feared. Just a man. Wren's eyes burned. You're not just a man, Damon. You're… What? Everything. The word escaped before she could stop it. You're patient and kind, and you look at me like I'm worth something. You ask what I need instead of telling me what to do. You… She laughed shakily. You make me feel like I could be extraordinary, even though I know I'm not. You are. I'm a girl who scrubbed floors. You're a woman who survived 22 years of cruelty without becoming cruel yourself. He cupped her face in both hands now, forcing her to meet his eyes. You're brave enough to speak truth to a king, and gentle enough to cry over books. You're resilient and stubborn, and so much stronger than you know. His voice dropped to a whisper. You're everything I've been waiting for, Wren. Everything. The tears she'd been fighting finally spilled over. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to be loved. Then let me teach you. He wiped her tears with his thumbs. Let me show you what it feels like to be cherished. Not because you earned it or deserved it or performed well enough. Just because you exist. Just because you're you. Why? The question was barely a whisper. Why do you care so much? Because you're my mate. Because my soul has been reaching for yours since before you were born. Because loving you isn't a choice. It's as natural as breathing. He pressed his forehead to hers. And because, in 300 years of loneliness, you're the first person who's ever made me feel like I might not have to be alone. Wren closed her eyes, let herself feel the warmth of him, the steadiness, the impossible safety of being held by someone who wanted nothing except her. I think I'm falling in love with you, she whispered. Damon went very still. You don't have to say it back, she added quickly. I know the bond is different for you. I know. He kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, a question rather than a demand. But when she melted into him, when her hands fisted in his shirt and she pulled him closer, it deepened into something fierce, something claiming, something that felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Damon laughed. I've loved you since the moment you told me your family sent you as an insult, he said. I've loved you every moment since. I will love you for the rest of eternity, if you'll let me. I'll let you. Wren smiled through her tears. I'll let you love me, Damon, and I'll spend the rest of my life learning how to love you back. He kissed her again, softer this time, and Wren felt the last of her walls crumble. She had been sent as a joke. She had become something infinitely more precious, and she was only just beginning to understand what that meant. They stayed in the library until the fire burned low and the candles guttered in their holders, talking, laughing, sharing pieces of themselves they had never shared with anyone. Damon told her about his centuries of loneliness, about watching his parents die, his siblings age and pass, his friends fade into memory, about the crushing weight of immortality when you had no one to share it with. Wren told him about the small rebellions that had kept her sane, sneaking books from her stepsister's rooms, teaching herself to read by candlelight, finding beauty in the gardens she was forced to tend, even when her hands bled from the work. You found ways to survive, Damon said, his voice soft with wonder, even when everything was designed to break you. I didn't have a choice. You did. You could have given up, could have become bitter or cruel or empty. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Instead, You stayed soft, stayed curious, stayed you. That's not just survival, Wren. That's triumph. She didn't know what to say, so she kissed him instead, softer this time, sweeter, a promise rather than a confession. When they finally parted ways for the night, Wren's cheeks ached from smiling. She had spent 22 years being told she was worthless, invisible, a burden to be tolerated at best. And now a king looked at her like she was the answer to every prayer he'd ever whispered into the dark. She still didn't fully believe it, still expected to wake up and find it had all been a dream. But for the first time in her life, she wanted to believe. And that, she thought, was a beginning. The next morning, a letter arrived. It bore her family's seal. Wren stared at it for a long moment, her heart suddenly pounding. Then, with trembling fingers, she broke the wax and unfolded the parchment. "Dearest daughter," it began, and Wren almost laughed at the hypocrisy of that greeting. "We have heard the joyous news of your engagement to His Majesty. How proud we are that our beloved Wren has been chosen for such an honor. We always knew you were destined for great things. We will be arriving at the palace within the fortnight to celebrate this blessed union and to take our rightful place as family of the future queen. With all our love, Mother." Wren read it twice, 3 times. Then she crumpled it in her fist and threw it into the fire. She watched the parchment blacken and curl, watched her stepmother's lies turn to ash. They were coming, the people who had tormented her, dismissed her, sold her as a joke, and now they wanted to claim her success as their own. Wren straightened her spine, lifted her chin. Let them come. She wasn't the scared, invisible girl they remembered. She was going to be a queen, and she would make sure they never forgot it. They arrived on a grey morning, their carriage rolling through the palace gates like they owned the place. Wren watched from her window as her stepmother emerged first, draped in her finest silks, her face arranged in an expression of maternal pride that made Wren's stomach turn. Her stepsisters followed, Cordelia and Isabel, beautiful and vain and wearing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Her father came last. He looked older than she remembered, smaller, like the years of cruelty had finally started to show on his face. Good, she thought. Let him wear his sins. You don't have to see them. Wren turned to find Damon in the doorway, his golden eyes dark with concern. He had wanted to refuse them entry entirely, but Wren had insisted. Yes, I do. She smoothed her gown, deep green velvet, embroidered with gold, worth more than everything her stepsisters owned combined. I need to face them, to show them who I've become. You don't need to prove anything to people who treated you like dirt. I'm not proving anything to them. Wren crossed to him and took his hands. I'm proving something to myself, that they don't have power over me anymore, that I can stand in front of them without breaking. Damon studied her face for a long moment. Then he lifted her hands to his lips. If they say one word that hurts you, I'm throwing them in the dungeon. You can't throw my family in the dungeon. I'm the king. I can do whatever I want. But he was smiling, and Wren felt some of her tension ease. Just stay close? Always. They descended to the great hall together. The Ashfords were already waiting, arranged in a perfect tableau of aristocratic grace. When Wren entered on Damon's arm, her stepmother's eyes widened, taking in the gown, the jewels, the way the king held her like she was precious. Wren, darling. Her stepmother swept forward, arms outstretched. How wonderful you look. We've been so worried about you. Wren stepped back before the woman could embrace her. Have you? Of course. Sending you off alone like that, not knowing if you'd be safe. She pressed a hand to her heart. A mother's worry never ceases. You're not my mother. The words fell like stones into still water. Her stepmother's smile froze. Well, of course, not by blood, but I raised you. You made me sleep in the servants' quarters. You fed me scraps from your table. You told the coachman to let the beast choke on my bones. Wren's voice was steady, cold. 22 years of swallowed words finally finding their way out. You didn't raise me. You survived me. Wren. Her father stepped forward, his face pale. That's enough. Whatever disagreements we've had. Disagreements? Wren laughed, and it sounded nothing like humor. Is that what we're calling it? You sent me to the king as a joke, father, an insult. You wanted him to reject me so you could prove how little I mattered. We never... I was there. I heard what she said. Wren nodded toward her stepmother. Let the beast have her. Maybe he'll choke on the bones. Those were her exact words. Silence. Her stepsisters had gone pale. Her stepmother's composure had cracked, revealing the cold calculation beneath. Her father couldn't meet her eyes. This is absurd, her stepmother snapped, dropping all pretense. We came here to support you, to celebrate your good fortune, and this is how you repay us? With accusations and ingratitude? Ingratitude? Damon's voice was soft, dangerous. For what, exactly, should she be grateful? We raised her, housed her, fed her. You starved her. Damon released Wren's arm and stalked toward her stepmother, each step deliberate. You dressed her in rags while your daughters wore silk. You worked her until her hands bled and then mocked her for being plain. He stopped inches from her face, towering over her. You sent her to me expecting her to be humiliated and discarded. Instead, I recognized her for what she is, the most precious thing in this entire realm. Her stepmother's face had gone white. Your Majesty, I never... Don't. The single word cracked like a whip. Don't lie to me. Don't pretend. I know exactly what you are and what you did, and the only reason you're not in chains right now is because Wren asked me to show mercy. He turned to look at Wren, and his expression softened. But my mercy has limits. He snapped his fingers, and guards appeared at every door. The Ashford family is hereby stripped of their noble title. Their lands and holdings are forfeit to the crown. They will be escorted from the palace and given 1 week to vacate their estate. You can't do this, her father's voice cracked. We're nobility. We have rights. You had rights. You forfeited them when you sold your daughter like livestock and called it a joke. Damon's smile was all teeth. Consider this a lesson in consequences. Wren. Her stepmother turned to her, desperation cracking through her composure. Wren, please. You can't let him do this. We're your family. Wren looked at the woman who had made her childhood a misery, who had told her over and over that she was worthless, who had sent her to what she hoped would be her doom. No, she said quietly. You're not. She turned her back on them. I believe we're done here, she said to Damon. I'd like to go to the garden. The roses are blooming. Damon offered his arm with a smile that made her heart soar. As my queen commands. They walked out together, leaving the screaming protests behind them. The guards would handle the rest. The Ashfords would be gone by nightfall, their reputation destroyed, their cruelty finally repaid. And Wren, the joke bride, the unwanted daughter, the girl who was never supposed to matter, walked through the palace on the arm of a king who looked at her like she was the sun. "How do you feel?" Damon asked once they reached the garden. Wren thought about it. Really thought. "Free," she said. "Like I've been carrying a weight my whole life, and I just set it down." "Good." He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "That's exactly how you should feel." "I'm ready," she said suddenly. "Ready for what?" "The bonding ceremony. The wedding. Whatever you want to call it." She looked up at him, her heart full to bursting. "I don't want to wait anymore. I want to be yours, Damon. Completely. Officially. Forever." His eyes blazed gold. "Are you sure? We can wait." "I've waited my whole life for someone to see me." She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. "I'm done waiting. I want to start living." Damon kissed her like she was air and he was drowning, like she was salvation and redemption and everything he'd ever needed. "Then we'll do it tonight," he breathed against her mouth. "Under the stars, in front of the entire kingdom." "Tonight," she agreed. And the joke bride prepared to become a queen. She spent the afternoon in a daze of preparations. The seamstress, who had become something of a friend over the past weeks, wept when she heard the news and immediately began work on a gown. The palace staff bustled with barely contained excitement, transforming the gardens into something out of a fairy tale. And through it all, Wren kept thinking about the look on her stepmother's face when Damon had stripped away everything she valued. It should have felt like revenge, like satisfaction, like victory. Instead, it felt like nothing. They were nothing to her now, just three small people who had tried to break her and failed. "You're doing that thing again?" Damon said, appearing beside her as she watched the servants string lanterns through the trees. "What thing?" Thinking so loudly I can practically hear it. Wren smiled. "I'm thinking about how different everything looks from this side." "What do you mean?" "When I was with them, everything felt so big. Their cruelty, their contempt, the way they made me feel like nothing." She shook her head slowly. "But now, looking back, I can see how small they really were. How afraid. They hated me because I survived despite everything they did, because they couldn't break me. They couldn't even bend you." Damon pulled her against his side. "You're the strongest person I've ever known, Wren. And I've known a lot of people in 3 centuries. I don't feel strong." "The strongest people never do." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Are you ready for tonight?" Wren looked at the garden, transformed into something magical by hundreds of hands working to celebrate her. Her. The girl who had scrubbed floors and eaten scraps and been told she was worthless. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." Damon's smile was like watching the sun rise. "Then let's go make you a queen." The ceremony took place at midnight, beneath a sky blazing with stars. The palace gardens had been transformed into something from a dream. Thousands of candles floated in the fountains. White flowers cascaded from every arch and trellis. The entire Lycan court had gathered. Warriors in ceremonial armor, nobles in their finest silks, servants who had been given the night off to witness history. And at the center of it all stood Wren. Her gown was silver and white, embroidered with tiny crystals that caught the candlelight and scattered it like stardust. Her hair was loose, threaded with moonflowers that the seamstress had insisted upon. She wore no crown. That would come later, but she didn't need one. She had never looked more like a queen. Damon waited for her at the altar, dressed in black and silver, his golden eyes tracking her every step. When she reached him, he took her hands in his. and his grip trembled slightly. The Lycan king, ancient and powerful and feared across the realm, was nervous. Ren squeezed his fingers. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." The elder who would perform the ceremony stepped forward, her white hair gleaming in the starlight. "We gather tonight to witness a bonding," she announced, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. "The joining of two souls into one, the creation of a partnership that will endure until the end of time." She turned to Damon. "Damon, King of the Northern Territories, do you claim this woman as your mate, your equal, your queen?" "I do." His voice was steady, but his eyes shone with emotion. "I claim her with every breath in my body. I will love her, protect her, and honor her for the rest of eternity." The elder nodded and turned to Ren. "Ren, daughter of no house, beholden to no name, do you accept this claim? Do you bind yourself to this man freely, without reservation or regret?" Ren looked at Damon, at the man who had seen treasure where others saw trash, who had chosen her when everyone else had thrown her away, who had given her a home, a purpose, a future she had never dared to imagine. "I do," she said. "I accept him with my whole heart. I will stand beside him, support him, and love him for as long as I live." "Then let the bond be sealed." Damon produced the silver blade. Ren held out her palm without hesitation. The cut was shallow, barely more than a sting. When their hands clasped together, blood meeting blood, Ren felt the bond snap into place like a key turning in a lock. It was overwhelming. Damon's love poured into her, fierce and protective and all-consuming. His joy, so bright it nearly blinded her. His relief that after 3 centuries of searching, he had finally found her. And beneath it all, a sense of rightness, of completion, of two halves finally becoming whole. "By blood and moonlight," the elder declared, "by choice and covenant, these two are bound. What fate has joined, let no force sunder." The crowd erupted in celebration. Howls rose into the night sky, wild, joyous, primal. Lycans, who had waited 3 centuries to see their king find his mate, finally released their relief in the only way they knew how. Damon cupped Ren's face in his hands and kissed her deeply, thoroughly, in front of everyone. She melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "My queen," he murmured against her lips. "My mate, my heart." "My king," she whispered back. "My choice, my home." When they finally broke apart, Damon raised their joined hands high. "Your queen!" he roared to the crowd. "Bow to her as you bow to me." As one, the entire assembly dropped to their knees, warriors and nobles, servants and soldiers, hundreds of people, bowing to the girl who had been sent as a joke. Ren looked out at the sea of bowed heads and felt tears streaming down her cheeks. She had spent 22 years being invisible, being nothing, being told that she would never matter to anyone. And now an entire kingdom knelt at her feet. The celebration lasted until dawn. There was feasting and dancing and more joy than Ren had ever witnessed in her life. People she had never met approached her with blessings and congratulations, with stories of how long they had waited for this day, with promises of loyalty that made her throat tight. Through it all, Damon never left her side. His hand stayed in hers, his presence a constant anchor in the overwhelming sea of newness. "How do you feel?" he asked as the sky began to lighten. "Like I'm dreaming." She leaned against him, exhausted and elated. Like I'm going to wake up in the servants' quarters, and none of this will be real. It's real. He pressed a kiss to her temple. I promise you, Wren, this is real. And it's forever. 1 year later, Wren stood in the great hall where Damon had first chosen her. So much had changed since that day. She had learned to be a queen, not through protocol and politics, though she had mastered those too, but through compassion and fairness. She had established shelters for orphaned children, had created programs to help those who had been discarded by their families find new purpose, had used her power to ensure that no one in the realm would ever feel as worthless as she once had. The people loved her for it, called her the Queen of Second Chances, said she was the best thing that had ever happened to their kingdom. And her family? The Ashfords had fallen far. Stripped of their titles, they had retreated to a small cottage on the edge of a neighbouring territory. Her stepmother had tried multiple times to contact her, letters full of false apologies and barely veiled requests for money. Wren had burned every single one without reading past the first line. Her stepsisters had married poorly, desperate matches to men who only wanted them for their fading beauty. Her father had drunk himself into an early grave, dying alone and unmourned. Wren felt nothing for any of them, not hatred, not satisfaction, just nothing. They had ceased to matter the moment she chose a different life. You're thinking again. She turned to find Damon in the doorway, a familiar smile on his face. He crossed to her and wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. I'm thinking about how far we've come, she said. I stood in this room a year ago, wearing a faded dress, expecting to be rejected. And instead? And instead, you chose me. She turned in his arms, rising on her toes to kiss him. You saw something in me that no one else ever had. You gave me a home, a purpose, a life I never dared to imagine. I gave you nothing. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Everything you've become, you built yourself. I just gave you the space to do it. You gave me love. That I did. His smile was soft, radiant. And I'll keep giving it to you for the rest of eternity. She kissed him again, deeper this time, pouring all her gratitude and joy and impossible happiness into the contact. She had been sent as a joke, the unwanted daughter, the garbage bride, the punchline to her family's cruel humour, and she had become a queen. Not because Damon had saved her, not because she had been rescued from her circumstances, but because she had survived long enough to find someone who recognized her worth. The joke bride who became a legend, the invisible girl who changed a kingdom, the woman who proved that worth was never about where you started. It was about who you became. If you loved Wren and Damon's story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. Drop a comment below telling me your favorite part. I read every single one. Until next time, stay wild.